Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, and you are listening to the Dr. Laurie Davis Show here on E360 TV, streaming live right now. Also streaming live on our YouTube channel, Laurie Davis Show Host. If you go in there, all of our uh, broadcasts are archived there, and also streaming live right now on our Facebook page, Self-Worth, the Missing Link Superstars. So there's three ways to access the show. And I know you might think it's an accident that my guest and I are dressed in these beautiful, bold colors. But my guest today, Kay Sheffield, colleague, co-author, sister member of GSFE. Welcome to the show, Kay.
Thank you so much. And it's great to be here, Laurie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kay, I think we should start before we actually get into the book. I had a thought during our countdown, and I did host my GSFE meeting this morning, and you were there, and you go out to Coachella and different places to GSFE meetings. Why don't we just spend maybe 4 or 5 minutes promoting GSFE and talking about the organization? Because, of course, that's how we actually met, was through another GSFE sister, Dr. Susie. So let's share. I'd love to know how you found GSFE.
Good question. And I'm really not sure if I could actually tack it down, but I know it was when Susie and I were talking and just found out that this organization was out there. I thought I'd been wanting to be part of a network, but I'd heard not so good things about networking. And this was basically women, helping women and being part of women and networking together. And I thought, why not go out and just give it a try and say yes? And so I showed up. I asked to be a member that day, and that was January a year ago. And now I'm a part of the GSFE out here in Coachella.
Beautiful. And for our viewers who don't know what that means, it's the Global Society of Female Entrepreneurs, founded by Dr. Robbie Marder. That was a little slip there. Dr. Robbie Motter. And she's like our friend, our mom, our sister, our mentor, and an amazing woman who founded the organization, which is now expanding worldwide. So if you're a female entrepreneur and you need a place to land where you will actually like the women you're working with, then GSFE may be for you. And you can contact myself or Kay, and we'd be happy to share more with you about that. So, yes, Susie,
Well,
yes, Kay.
okay. We do have a few men in there too. So we've let a few men in. I think there's 2 or 3 in our group. So yes, have men who can come and talk to us and see if we can let you in or not. We'd love to talk to you about it too.
Cool. Yeah, we have a man in our group too, whom you heard this morning, who'd love to be part of our organization as well as an ambassador or a mentor. That he has, a whole thing around finance that he likes to help women with finance. So I invited him to join us as well. All right. Well, a while back, actually, I joined GSFE probably almost 3 years ago now during COVID. Can you picture this? Okay. COVID lands, and now my main stream of income, which is retreat clients coming in person, is gone because we couldn't take in anybody. Thank gosh I had worked virtually for many, many years, and I could rely on online. Like Zoom is nothing new to me. I've been doing it for years. Not Zoom particularly in terms of the company, but the technology. And so Zoom hit, and I started thinking, maybe I just need to spend this time reflecting where I want to go with the business. And I met another GSFE sister, Angeline Benjamin, on a different network altogether outside of GSFE. And then she invited me to come and check it out. And so I joined GSFE during COVID. And it has been the most amazing journey. And part of that journey is what we're going to talk about today. Because, of course, Robbie is always out there finding opportunities, wanting us to get engaged in things. And so I didn't participate in book number 1, which was called Showing Up and Asking, which was a compilation book, I think around 38 authors, something like that.
A little bit more than that.
Is it more than that?
64.
Well, ours is 64.
Oh, for volume
But
1?
I'm talking about volume 1.
Okay.
Volume 1, she had about 30 plus.
Yeah.
So then it was so popular, went number 1 bestseller. She decided to do a second one to honor her birthday, her 86th birthday. And so she was going to put the cap on 86. But 64 of us ended up writing an article about showing up and the power is in the asking. So what was your reaction when Robbie first contacted you, or you were first contacted about contributing? What was your reaction to that?
Well, at first it was shock because it was at a GSFE meeting and it was brought up they're going to write this book and why don't you get into it? And several people there said something about it. And I kept thinking, well, I don't know. I've always wanted to write a book, always, but to write this, I'm not sure. And then I kept thinking the positive and the negative. Well, it's only 2,500 words. Well, no, you've never done this before. Well, but this would be good because you're doing it with 64 other people or 3. And what a neat idea to be able to work with somebody, other people, and maybe they would bring you up instead of you being at the bottom of the bestseller list. They would be bringing you up too. So, and then I weighed the money. Oh gosh, I got to put some money into this too. And but then I decided, I kind of thought about it and called that next day and said, okay, yes, how do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
I showed up and I asked.
Absolutely. And so when I was invited, I went, yes. I missed the first one because it was during COVID and I didn't really have the means to participate. Although she wasn't charged, we didn't pay for that. But I thought, well, this is minimal. I've paid way lots more money than that to be in a project. So I went, yeah, no, and it only covered the costs of the publishing. So yes, let's support that. And especially since it was her birthday, my 87th birthday in March. So I thought, yeah, I need to do this to honor that. So then we had to come up with 2,500 words. Over to you, Kay.
And Laurie, it was also International Women's Day was March 8th.
Yes.
So I think that's even a more glorious thing to think about with this. And why not women? Why not do what we can do? So
yeah, and I'd forgotten about that. Thank you, Kay, for reminding me. Yes, it was International Women's Day. And I actually have a flyer on my wall framed, and it says Laurie Davis Live. And my picture, I'm looking at it right now, and it says International Women's Day 1994.
oh.
And I was a speaker in Montreal, Canada. My topic was Success Defined. And I'm looking at my picture and I'm going, gosh, I was young then. And I didn't know anything compared to what I know now. But I have that up because that was on March 8th, 1994. I was honored in that way. So you're right. Thank you for bringing that up.
Kind of
so, yeah. So what were the thoughts that went through your mind as to what you were going to write about? Because we had to write stories that showed us actually showing up and asking for something, because this is Robbie's big mantra, show up, just keep showing up, and the power is in the asking. What do you need? And let's before we get into our books, let's talk about why is it really hard for people to ask for help? What do you think about that?
I think it is hard because people are afraid to. Sometimes they're afraid to show up and they're afraid to ask, and all of it just together is really hard. But in reading Robbie's story in this book, I mean, she said it gets easier as time goes along, and just continue to do it and keep doing it. And I'm finding that. In fact, I've almost got to watch that I close my trap and don't ask too much, too often, too vigilantly, or whatever. So it's just a smooth talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
So that's one I would think of.
Mhm. Well, I think for myself, I can only speak for myself, but I didn't want to ask anybody for help because I thought it made me look stupid or it made me feel like I couldn't solve my own problems. And that didn't leave me feeling very good. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Mm. Because we all think we should know the answers to everything.
yeah, you do. And it's hard to do that. So in your book, when you wrote your section of the book, did you have the same kind of concern as about showing up and asking?
Yes, absolutely. And I thought, well, I had to really, really think about when in my life did I actually do that and execute something. And I was quite pleased with the fact that I had more situations than I realized. And so I was forced to kind of go back to my early days in my 20s and my 30s because that's when I really stepped out of my comfort zone. Because when you're young, you do think you can do everything. I
Yes.
had a friend who, you're a mom, so you can relate to this. I had a friend who had a sign on her fridge. She had three boys, 19, 18, and 17. And she had a sign on her fridge. This would be a good time for you to leave home while you know everything.
I
So,
like that.
right?
And I
So,
like the way you did your part of the book. Your section of the book was really nicely done with dividing it up into stories,
yes,
episodes.
yeah, I think I had four or five of them. And
Yeah.
what did you call your chapter, Kay? What did you name your
Oh,
chapter?
I didn't know we were supposed to name it anything special, so I just put it's all about showing up and asking.
Oh,
So I
cool.
hadn't realized this is since my first book. I thought, how do you do this? Where do you go? How do you find these stories? And it was interesting. Eric Worre always says, just say yes, then go home and figure it out.
Oh,
And I
wow.
I think sometimes that's kind of a scary thing to do, and sometimes it's just the wisest thing to do. Say
Mhm.
yes, and I'm sure you've got to have some thoughts behind it to say, well, how would I do it, and what would I say, and then you figure it out though later, which is what he said. But
Mhm.
does that kind of what happened for you? You said yes right away, and I kind of held off.
Well, that's okay. I just went, you know what? I called my chapter "It Takes Guts to Leave the Ruts,"
Yeah, love that.
right? Because it's hard. It's hard for us to ask for help. It was hard. I won't generalize like that. It was hard for me to ask for help because I thought I spent a lot of my life thinking that I'm a one woman show. And the only way, this brings this up at the moment, way back in the day, the only way I could actually validate myself was if I got myself through a hard time and then I could pat myself on the shoulder and say, wow, you are so strong. You are amazing. Look what you just went through. And then the next thing I know, I was creating the next crisis
Mm-hmm.
because that's the only way I could validate myself. How sad is that? And I did that for years, Kay. I did it for years
Oh, oh my goodness.
because I didn't love who I was. I didn't see my own value. So the only way I could feel that value was to get through a hard time.
Well, and quite often we were told as kids, you're a girl. Girls don't do that kind of thing,
Well,
or we're not felt. We don't feel like we have the strength to do it. We always are the homebodies or the one taking on other family chores.
well, especially in our generation, right? We were brought up in the 50s and 60s. And back then, there were specific roles for men and specific roles for women.
Yes.
And I remember I was a big Agatha Christie fan. I loved her novels. I love murder mysteries. And I had read where her husband was an archaeologist and spent a lot of time digging bones. And when I was in grade 9, I had to go visit my guidance counselor because we were going to choose what curriculum we needed to take in order to either be a secretary or go to university. And my marks weren't that great. And I thought, I don't know what's she going to say, but back in the 60s, if you wanted to be a professional, and you know this very well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but if we're having some younger women listen to us today, they'll know. But if you wanted to be a professional woman, is this not true, Kay? You either became a teacher, a nurse, a secretary, or maybe a hairstylist,
Yes. Yes.
right?
And that's kind of what I did. I took a path teacher, but also something else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but
So I'm
yeah.
going down the hall and I'm thinking, I don't want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a secretary. I don't even want to, no. So I thought, I planned this little plan that I'm going to tell my guidance counselor, I want to be an archaeologist. And that's the one thing that came to me because of Agatha Christie's husband.
Oh,
So I walk into the guidance office, and our guidance counselor was very hard nosed, kind of an old maid kind of person. And she said, well, Laurie Jeffers, it looks to me like we need to put you into the general program because the very best that you could probably do would be to be a receptionist or a secretary. I hate paperwork. I would not be a good person. And I said, well, actually, Miss Brown, I've decided I want to be an archaeologist. And her head came up from the paper because she was leaning over. Head came up and she said, what you just said, girls can't be archaeologists. I went, what are you talking about? And I remember leaving the office and recognizing that breasts have now become a career blocker.
yep.
Yeah,
So true. So
right.
true.
And our women today have so many opportunities. Okay? But in order to take advantage of those opportunities, they have to do what we're talking about today, which is you have to show up. You
Yes.
have to ask for help
Yes.
or what you need, right?
Yes. And continue to ask. And just, I remember walking by different things and thinking, oh, goodness, I should have asked. And I didn't. Sometimes I'll turn around and come back. And those
Yeah,
are glorious times. Actually, feels really good to be able to do that.
yeah,
But don't always do it. And later
yeah.
think, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that?
And how many of us have seen something that we really like? Maybe it's a dress, maybe it's a car, maybe it's a piece of decor, and the price tag was missing. And we didn't even ask, how much is that?
Yeah.
We just walked away without it because we decided it was going to be too much before we even knew,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, why don't we hear from you as to how you started your chapter and just, maybe read for 3 or 4 minutes and then I'll read some and then you can read some and then I can read some. So let's hear from you, Kay. What was it that you wrote about in
I,
around showing up and asking?
I had more fun reading everybody else's stories than I
Well,
did
of
my
course.
own, I think. So, and it is nice to be able to do. Um, okay, I started mine out with when I was asked to show up at a friend's house to hear a dynamic speaker and a woman who I really admired. I showed up. She is a well-known health care provider in the community who has her own business. I showed up to hear how this woman had almost died several years before. A couple of big, well-known hospitals had given up on her and told her to go home and have her intestines taken out. She was unable to move around or eat. She wore a diaper all day and crawled from her bed to in the morning and laid out on the couch. She was unable to move or take care of her children, and she wasn't able to even function as a homemaker in her home. This woman was young in midlife and had these young children. She was scheduled to have surgery to remove much of her inner digestive parts. She was then given some capsules by a neighbor who just suggested that she try them. They are fruits and vegetables only in a capsule, was what the lady said. The neighbor, and then uh, they shouldn't cause any complications because they are all natural. She decided to try them, and miraculously, she began getting better within a short time. She was able to move, eat, do some of the household chores, and be with her family. She was moved, well, I was really moved by her story and decided to try these capsules with fruits and vegetables in them. So that was my first paragraph, long paragraph.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Well,
You got to read one of yours?
sure, I'll read my first one too. So, for me, it was a bit of a different experience, but I could appreciate what this person, your person, was dealing with for sure. So I wrote, the first time in my life that I showed up and asked for anything that I can remember was in 1962. I was 12. My dad had lost his big paying job with the steel company he worked for as a payroll clerk and accountant. The company went bankrupt, and happy to say that had nothing to do with my dad's brilliant mind or honest character. What happened next was the lack of income, and I could see for the first time my family struggling to put food on the table. Back then, there was no severance package or compensation. So Dad went on unemployment insurance that paid $36 every 2 weeks. I decided to ask my dad for a meeting. He agreed, and the next day we sat down and I shared that I wanted to know if he would allow me to help the family. I will admit I was nervous, not knowing what his reaction might be, given that male pride and all that. Dad was a proud man, so initially this did not get well received. He had no idea what I had planned. I proceeded to share my idea to, at the very least, pay for groceries each week. I could see how much stress that was causing my mom and the other kids in the family. It's a scary feeling not knowing where our next meal might be coming from in that moment. We lived on a street that was sprinkled with those wartime prefabricated houses, inhabited mostly with young couples and kids just like us. Once Dad got over himself, he received my project and became my encourager. We got out colored paper and crayons and created handmade flyers for me to place in everybody's mailbox up and down the street. The flyer read, babysitting, housework, lawn mowing, dog walking, reasonable rates, call Laurie. In case of emergency, parents are nearby at 35 Simon Street. Dad, being a numbers man, helped me with the pricing, and I was about to launch my very first business. The phone started ringing, and soon I was working every day after school and on weekends. I remember how excited Mom was to now be able to get back to shopping for food again and not worrying about it. Dad helped me to manage the finances, and we were partners from that day forward. All because I showed up and asked for what I wanted to do. It left me feeling proud of myself and my family, and not long after, Dad got a new job, and we were back to never worrying about anything ever again.
Fantastic. It is sometimes our families that we have to even ask for
I
things,
know,
isn't it? Yeah.
because he said, no, well, you don't have to do that. And I'm going, but I want to do that, and I can do lots.
Yeah.
So please, Dad, may I? I asked
Yes.
to show
Good
up.
thing you did. Good thing you did. You saved the family and actually set you on a path that has been life changing for you and for others. I mean, looking at it in this book, and I love reading your story in here and the things that happened to you and
Mhm.
how you were assertive and just went out and asked for it, asked for what you wanted.
Right
And
on.
nobody else had done that before. Well, then a couple of them say, nobody's done that before. We've had a whole bunch of interviews in here. And nobody's asked. But you did.
Mhm.
So that's good.
Yeah. All right, over to you, Kay, for another part of your chapter.
Oh, let's see. I just put my thing away. Where did I put it?
Oh no, we have to keep it out. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And I've lost my sticker. But there it is. There it is. Okay. Let's see. I think another one, and I'll just tell you about it. I'm not sure how I've written it up here, but it was I'd had cancer and then had 2 years later I had a melanoma first on my foot, tiny little black mole, which might be worthwhile to remember for other people. Please look at your bodies all over, and even the tiniest little moles, have your dermatologist check. And so 2 years later, I ended up coming in. The doctor, I was the last patient. He made me last, and I came in, and he started writing on the bed paper. You know, there's a bed paper that we have in our doctor's rooms, and he started pulled up this pen, and I thought, oh, here it comes. Well, I want to tell you, you have breast cancer, was the first words. And then I'm not sure that he said whatever he said after that point. But he started drawing and showing me where it was and how it was and what he was going to do. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And then starting to read. I just started reading everything I could think of. And he said, okay, this was several weeks later. He said, we've taken the lump out. I've put in markers in your breast to say where it is that we took it out. And I want you to go get chemotherapy and then radiation. And so I left thinking, okay, I don't want either one of those. Came home and started reading. And I came back to him and said, my lump was only a 1.8 centimeter. I think I do not need to have surgery, have any chemo treatment after the surgery. I think we are good to go, and I don't want it. And I'm not sure I even want radiation. So, and I said, I don't know what you can do, but I really don't want to do the chemotherapy. So by me saying that, he ended up taking that information and all of his slides in front of 65 doctors at Kaiser and showing them all the information. And they said, nah, I wouldn't do it. 2% change if you take chemotherapy or not. And why would you do that to your body? So I won out on that one. I thought, oh, good. That was a good one to win out on and not have to go back and get the chemotherapy. But part of that story is in the book. And you can look on my page, which is, I forget, 502 or 503, 507. My story is in this book. So
Nice.
yep, it was
Beautiful.
fun to do.
Beautiful.
Fun to write up and to think about. I think, and Laurie, maybe you've got some other different kinds of stories. I've got one more I want to tell that was backwards, but tell one of your stories and then I'll tell my backwards story.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just shared my story of showing up to the guidance counselor. That was my memory number 2, showing up to the guidance counselor and saying, you know what? And what happened was I went into the academic program regardless of my marks, and then eventually became a teacher. So my memory number 3 of showing up and asking was I had graduated with a scholarship to the Nova Scotia Teachers College, where I would spend 2 years taking my initial teacher training. I excelled here, and my marks were higher than they had ever been in school, and I loved everything about it. We were informed that superintendents from across the province would be coming to interview us. At that time, there was a shortage of teachers back in 1970, and we could basically pick whatever grade or school we wanted, there would be a position. And the going annual income at that time was $2,500 a year. The employers each had a space where we could present ourselves and get all of our questions answered. Things like, what did the benefit package look like? How large was the student body? And a description of the community. Of course, always having a business mind, I had an extra question that I asked. And was this the provincial rate, the most that I could ever expect for earnings? And I kept hearing, yes, yes, that's all we can do. That's what's available. However, a turn in the road was about to happen. I asked this particular superintendent of the largest school board in the province, and he smiled at me and said, you are the only person I have spoken to today who has asked that question. In fact, we do have a couple of communities that offer an extra $1,000 a year. They are marginalized communities where the risks are higher, outside of the city, so travel is involved. And without any further ado, I jumped in and shared that I would have no problem going there. Most of my fellow colleagues were shocked and amazed that this opportunity was available. They showed up, but they failed to ask for what they needed. In the end, I would be earning that extra $1,000, which came in handy to pay off my student loan. I remained working in that community for the next 6 years.
Fantastic. I think, what do you think about this? But I think more so nowadays, people are starting to realize that they can, uh, and younger youth can realize they can show up, they can ask, and they do. They ask much more readily than we ever did.
Absolutely.
Do you finding that too?
Mhm.
And I'm finding it everywhere. I mean, everything is about showing up, and then don't forget to ask what you want. And it's everywhere. But maybe I'm just watching for it now more so than ever. And I think it was really a good life lesson to have written this book to say, okay, what what have you done? Where have you shown up, and how have you asked? And so, yeah, I think this was almost a training lesson back to me, rather
Yes.
than just what you're doing on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And what I found fun was to actually, the article forced me to go back and reflect on my younger years and what did I actually do and what did I actually ask for. And I was actually quite surprised that I had shown up so often and asked for so much because I never really in those days ever considered myself to be totally confident, and I had a lot of self-worth issues and I had body image issues, and I just never really felt that on the inside. I might have looked it on the outside, but so writing the article, one of the benefits for me was to actually give myself a little credit for the things that I have done because I'm the last person to recognize that. And I think that's pretty common amongst all of us. We're pretty hard on ourselves sometimes. What do you know about that?
A lot, as we talked about just before this program. And I think we do. We just tend to be hard on ourselves. We expect more of us. Um, and maybe our parents expected more of us too. I don't know. Back when in the day, um, I think my dad really expected me to. I think he really was hoping I'd go ahead and get a PhD someplace, but I didn't do that. Not yet. It's always been a consideration, but I think that, yeah, we parents expected a lot of us, and we do too. We expect a lot of ourselves as well, just trying to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But is it worth it? I think we can be only the best we can be at this moment in time and with what we've got given
Yeah, I
to us.
always tell people, don't be so hard on ourselves. We did the best we could with the information we had at the time,
Yes.
right? So the information that I have privilege to today, I didn't have that information 5 years ago, 10 years ago, not even 2 years ago, because I feel every day I evolve and learn more from others.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I've learned a lot just being about a year with you, I think, and doing studies with you and learning together. I think it's been absolutely wonderful to be able to do that on
Hmm.
your programs.
Well, thank
Uh,
you.
yeah.
All right, what's your next story look like? Your next part.
Good question. It's been interesting because I mentioned at the beginning, I was always thinking about writing a book, but then afraid to speak out or reach out on my own. And this was really neat to be able to be part of this program where we could try, just step out and try. And I was so glad I had asked to be part of this. But it was interesting. I started hearing from people. Other people said, "Kay, you really should write a book." Then my daughter said it too when I was back in Michigan. She said, "Mom, you should write a book about your life." But I started thinking about that, and it's probably down the road a little ways. But right now we're trying to get ready for a high school reunion, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we have got so many stories. Since we graduated from high school, we were in high school in Germany for several years together. And
Right.
then when we graduated, we've come back here to the States, but the reunion's going to be out here near me in Southern California, yeah, in October, and it'll be so neat to be part of that and maybe have another book ready. That's probably my next one. See if we can conjure up some stories. What's your next one going to be?
My next one, I'm already working on it. Actually, it's a 3-book series, and it's a story that is actually true, based on true events, but making it fictional. So the first book is called Abuse of Power. And I've had lots of experience with that. You know, when you put your faith and trust in people that are supposed to be professionals, and then they use those positions to manipulate and kind of covert, and there's been abuse of power in our legal system, in our educational system. Sometimes parents even abuse their power as a parent. So the book is all about how power can be the key that people use to abuse others. And that's the whole gist of the book. And I'm using my own story as part of that. I was involved in a very nasty legal battle back in probably 25 years ago. And the legal system really had their way with me. It would never happen today. And so there was a lot of deception, lies, cover-ups, etc. So it's taken me 25 years to put the story forward, which I'm busy working on right now.
Gosh, that should be so helpful for many people to read, and just to hear your wise words, what you've gone through, how you've gotten out of it.
Yeah, and it was like the reason I went through all of that was because I had information that could have taken some very high level people down.
Ooh.
And I chose not to do that. And also the confidentiality of my clients. And so there were lots of factors. So that's my first book. Yeah. And then the second part was going through the whole thing. And then the third book is about the aftermath, how it had continued to impact my business, my career, me, etc. Yeah, it's going to be really powerful.
I bet there's a lot of wisdom that you've gleaned from that and put in that book. Yeah, that would be really
well.
good.
I think it'll give other people permission to step out and step up, and also it's actually quite unbelievable, and it could be a series. I'm envisioning it as a TV series.
Oh, wow.
Called Abuse of Power, and how many stories could be integrated into that? So thank you for asking.
Yeah, very interesting. Yes. What's our next book? What's our next?
Our next book.
Yes. Very good. Do you have any others in mind that you want to write about?
Yes, I do. I have another little short book, 2 of them actually. One is called Pride's Pearls, which is my dog. And I took a beautiful photo of him with this nice double strand set of pearls around his neck. We have the cover. Sylvia's working with me on that. And each page is answering a question. So the question is, according to Pride, my dog, what is love? What is fear? What is self-confidence? What is, loyalty? So taking those core values and having them come, and Pride being the voice for that, because I actually rescued him from a neighbor who was passing away, and I had not had a dog in 30 years, and I didn't even know how to take care of a dog when I took him. And he's just taught me so much.
They do.
What is patience,
Yeah.
So that's one. And then the other one we've got coming up is 100 Shades of Dysfunction.
Oh my goodness.
With each little dysfunctional behavior in a little paragraph. So it's going to be like a short quip on each of the topics.
So it's like on a daily basis, what's your
100 shades. We have 100 shades of entrepreneurship, which is pretty serious stuff. And then we have 100 shades of prosperity coming up with Ramin and I. And so that's pretty amazing. And I do have one in leadership, 100 shades of leadership. And now I'm going to do 100 Shades of Dysfunction because that's what I learned when I was evacuated from our huge wildfires. I had time on my hands. Don't give me time on my hands, Kate.
Yeah. And did you find some dysfunction at that time?
Oh yeah, for sure. Mhm.
Probably
Because we
went
were
back.
busy. We were busy watching how people were reacting. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I mean, we were given evacuation orders, and some people actually stayed in town. Like, how does that work? Why would you do that? Right? Or people who were fearful because they were afraid their houses were going to burn down, and what would they do to start over? And they don't realize they have everything to start over. You don't need stuff to start over. You need yourself intact to start over.
Right. Well, I was thinking more along the lines of dysfunction, meaning what do you do in an emergency? Was I ready? Did I have my bag packed or with little
Yeah,
things that were important? Probably, probably not. And probably you came home and put those all together so that
I
this
did.
part.
It's
Okay.
kind of like a new mom getting ready to go to the hospital. You know, you all knew how to do that. I never went to the hospital to have a baby, so I
Oh,
didn't know how to do that.
oh.
All right. Do you have another story you want to share, or do you want me to share one, or what should we do? We've got about, well, we got probably another 10 or 12 minutes left.
Well, I was just going to ask about your dog book. And I think that would be so interesting to do. I've got so many stories from my crazy boxer dog, Tiger, that
Yes.
I used to tell my grandkids those stories at night because oh, tell us another Tiger story. It was always something more that they wanted to hear from Tiger or about Tiger. And so your book that's about your dog, Pride, then when you wrote the story, was it really from his perspective? What would he think? What would he do? What would he think of love would be? And it would be just be able to sit on the chair with you or the couch with you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be fun.
I think it'll be a book that kids would enjoy, adults would
Yes.
enjoy, because it's going to be Pride's voice, telling how we took him and how much we love him. And, um, I'm wanting to go out and they're not listening to me. Just a different perspective coming from his point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
I
have all
think
these
that's,
photos I've taken of him that would, attach themselves to each chapter type of thing.
oh, that would be neat. Or even to have Sylvia draw some pictures to go with it would
Well,
be
she
fun
has
too.
already. Yes, she has.
She did? Oh my goodness.
Yes, wait till you see. It's so cute.
Oh, I would love to see that. I was thinking that maybe something from Robbie here would be really
Okay.
neat.
Oh, cool. Yes, please.
Um, I think one of the last things I was reading in this book was as her story was about this group of MBA students that are from a local college and how in January this year, 2023, where we are right now, um, they had come to her and asked her if they could do a year of studies and recommendations, or at least GSFE was recommended to her. And so they decided, I guess it was in the consideration for a while, and then they've decided to take us on. So GSFE is now going to be part of that project for 2023. And I think, what the hell neat that's going to be, and see what else we can do better since we're fairly young as an organization. What When did we start? 2016, 2017, somewhere in there with Robbie. And so Robbie's just always finding these things have come to her, and it's just been neat to see, okay, what can we do? That might be another chapter in a book or a book about what the
Mhm.
MBA students have found and done.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I have another little story I can share. Memory
When you
number,
have,
memory number 4.
okay, let's hear about your story.
Well, I was ambitious for a woman of my age in 1970. I was 21. As soon as I was in the classroom teaching, my next move was to become an administrator in the role of a vice principal. Each time an opportunity showed up, I applied right away. I was told how arrogant of me to think that as a brand new teacher without any experience and being a woman, I could take on this leadership role. In grade 7, at the age of 12, I was presented with a silver dollar and a certificate for exhibiting leadership skills. I was already convinced I could do it because a teacher had believed in me. In those days, our neighborhood East Coast Canada school boards were not elected, they were appointed. So you could have someone there for years holding down their chair. The trail of applications and interviews began, and each time a position came up, we of course were notified as they hired from within. For 7 consecutive years, I continued to show up and present myself before the board to be interviewed. I had 3 strikes against me. I was young, still in my 20s. I was female, wanting a position that was dominantly held by males at the time. And I was ambitious in a slow-moving system. Finally, year number 8 rolled around and another position showed up. I was quite discouraged by now, thinking I would never get promoted. My husband encouraged me, offering to drive me there and support my desires. So I got dressed up and we headed out to meet the board for the 8th year in a row. One of the board members was an aging farmer whom I had met on every interview before this one. I sat next to him at the boardroom table while he at the same time gave me an eye roll that would sink the strongest of hearts. I was armoring up to face the rejection once again. To my surprise, he stood up and started a speech that I was not prepared for at all. He declared there would be no interview. Based on my consecutive appearances before the board, he advised them that they just needed to give me the darn job. He shared that he had no doubt that if they did not give me the job, they would continue to face me for on God knows how long. I practically flew myself all the way home. Yes, there are times when showing up and asking for what we want can be extremely stressful and frustrating. I know persistence is one of the greatest keys to getting what we want.
Love that. I really like that story.
I'll never forget him. Oh my gosh. Yeah. He was
Probably
really
been there for a long while.
Oh, years. Yes.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
But he
Well,
was able to tell you that. I had this backwards story I was going to tell a
okay, go
minute ago.
ahead.
And let's see, is it right there? I'm trying to figure out why, find out where I put it. Maybe I better just tell about it.
Okay.
But it's in the last part of my story, so you can look it up and find it there. But it was about I was going to be at my daughter's house, and it was coming up right when I was writing this book, and I thought, I don't know how to get to the airport. My grandson, who had been living with me for 5 years, he found a job and left the state, and I don't have anybody to take me to the airport. And what am I going to do? And everybody else is working, and so I mentioned it at a Bible study group that I was in with my adult friends, and 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 I finally had a GSFE, I mentioned it there, and had a man come up and say, oh, yes, you've got to do, I can take you in, no problem. And it was all set up to go. And 3 days before I was to take off, he called and said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I just fell and I think I broke something. And I think you better find somebody else for Sunday to take you to the airport. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I said, I hope you're okay, and hung up. And he said, the ambulance is on the way. And I thought, okay, I hope you're okay. And kept checking back with him the next couple of days. And it was like the day before I was to leave. And I still kept thinking, okay, how am I going to get to the airport? I still don't have a way. I guess I could take Uber, but I really have not had a good experience with them. So I was still kind of on the fence. And a girlfriend called up and said, she's in that Bible study group. She said, Kay, did you find a ride for going to the airport? And I said, no. And she said, would you like for me to take you? And I said, well, it's at 4:00 in the morning. I hate to ask anybody to take me at that time. And she said, I'll do it. I've got to go take a walk. We're going to go hiking out in the desert, and it's on our way. I'll just go that way, and then I'll go back and pick up my friend and then go out for the hike. And so she showed up. She asked. So it was kind of like a reverse thing, and nothing I ever expected to happen. Pretty much appreciated and had a lot of gratitude for that.
Well, I'm really glad you said yes, because the old Laurie would have said, "Oh no, that's okay. I'll find out."
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
And
and
then
that was me.
then we steal other people's joy in giving to us.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Like, who are we to be doing that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kay, we've got about 4 minutes, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about, first of all, if you wish to contact Kay, either about the book or her wellness products or her health programs, please, this is how you get in touch with Kay. And if you have a story to tell, then you need to contact me directly on our show line. Do you have a story that you need to tell? And I like to dedicate Thursdays to authors, athletes, celebrities, miscellaneous. So every Thursday we'll be interviewing some authors. And Kay, we'll be doing this again, and we'd love for you to join us again with the others who will be coming on board. I do have other authors from our compilation book booked in for July, so they got back to me with different dates. Another announcement, if you want to be mentored in finance, we're launching in September 100 Shades of Prosperity, hosted by Ramin and I. So if that's something you're interested in, it's 2 workshops a week, and by the end of it, you can be your own portfolio manager, finance advisor. It's just amazing what we've put together. And let's see, if you want to contact me, you can phone me here at my 566 number, 780-566-2340. So you've been listening to the Dr. Laurie Davis Show, and I'd like to also put out that starting July 3rd, our shows will be broadcast at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific Time, rather than the middle of the day in the afternoon. So new show times start on July the 3rd, and we'll be broadcasting 4 days. Well, we broadcast 5 days a week, but at least 3 to 4 live shows a week. So, and if you want to watch our shows, then just please go into e360tv.com, and all of our episodes are there. We have about 150 shows in the can right now. So please feel free to go in. Over to you, Kay, for any closing remarks or words of encouragement to our guests concerning our book. Oh, why don't you talk about where they can get our book?
Yes, I know of Amazon. Amazon is where I ended up going to get my book, and it's easily available there. The last one was available in Barnes and Noble and Walmart. I don't know if this one's there yet. Do you happen to know that?
I believe so. I believe that they have accepted that, so you can purchase it physically, Barnes and Nobles, Walmart, and online, Amazon.com, and just go under bestsellers, because we were bestseller #1 the first day out there. And if you look under bestsellers, we'll be there.
International bestseller.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. All right. Well, thank you, Kay, for being on the show today. I really enjoy always chatting with you. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, and just so gracious of you to step up and start the ball rolling for our other GSFE sisters whom I want to speak with. So if you're talking to any of the co-authors down your way, please let them know. And I will share the show to our GSFE website, and it'll be broadcast there as well. So thank you, Kay. Have a great day.
Thank you, Laurie.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Okay.